I only read one book, but it's a good book, don't you know? I act the way I act because the good book tells me so. If I want to know how to be good, it's to the good book that I go. Because the good book is a book, and it is good, and it's a book.
And Abraham was old, and well stricken in age, and the Lord, who was Abraham's best mate, and a lot less invisible in those days than he would become in later years, had blessed Abraham in all things, apparently, all but common sense, and though he did own all the lands in Canaan, he did not have to consider things like education, social security, and health care while trying to balance his finances. And Abraham, who was knocking on towards 140 years old, in clear breach of the Lord's rule that nobody would live past 120, and so rarely made any sense any more, said unto his eldest servant in his house, that ruled over all he had, Put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh. And I will make thee swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of the earth, that thou shalt not take a wife unto my son of the daughters of Canaanites, among whom I dwell, for it is well known that old people don't hold back when it comes to being overtly racist. But thou shalt go unto my country, and to my kindred, and take a wife unto my son Isaac. For he has not once talked to me since we did go mountain climbing a few years back, and I am concerned that he is 40 years of age, still living at home, and he has not yet got himself a girlfriend. And the servant said unto him, Peradventure the woman will not be willing to follow me unto this land, for they do believe that I am a dirty pervert, who doth try to spirit them away into the desert with a fanciful story that they will be married to a handsome prince. Must I needs bring thy son again unto the land from whence thou camest? And Abraham said unto him, Beware thou that thou bring not my son thither again, for the place is a real shithole. Why else would you thinkest that I did leave in the first place? And besides, he probably will notest come back. The Lord God of heaven, which took me from my father's house, and from the land of my kindred, and which spake unto me, and said that I shall live the rest of my years in a tent in a land full of bloody foreigners, and that sware unto me, saying, If you cut the end off your cock, and if you sacrifice your only son, unto thy seed will I give this land. Though how he would do that, if I had actually gone through with killing my only son, I will never know. He shall send his angel before thee, and thou shalt take a wife unto my son from thence. And if the woman will not be willing to follow thee, then thou shalt be clear from this my oath. Only bring not my son thither again. Simply usest a rag soaked in chloroform and a generous amount of duct tape and rope, and slingest her in the back of an ox cart and hightail it out of there before the locals catch thee. And wishing that his master would just shake hands like everyone else, the servant put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master, and sware to him concerning that matter, and then he did go and soak his hand in a bucket of bleach for several hours. As once he had placed his hand under the thigh of his master, to his horror, he did find himself cupping Abraham's scrotum in the palm of his hand. Ugh. And the servant took 10 camels of the camels of his master, and 1 large brown bear, and departed. For all the goods of his master were in his hand still, and he did try very hard to banish this from his mind. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia, unto the city of Nahor, where Abraham's brother did live. And he made his camels to kneel down without the city, by the well of water, at the time of the evening, even the time that the woman go out to draw water, and none of this sounded creepy in any way. And the angel of the Lord was nowhere to be seen. And he said, O Lord God, my master Abraham, I pray thee, send me good speed this day, and show kindness unto my master Abraham, that the authorities of this city shall not come unto me, and ask me what I am doing. Behold, I stand here by the well of the water, with a big bag of lollipops, and the daughters of the men of the city come out to draw water. And let it come to pass that the damsel to whom I say, Let down thy pitcher, I pray thee, that I may drink, and she shall say, Drink, and I will give thy camels drink also. And then I shall ask her if she doth want to see some puppies, and she shall agree. Let the same be she that thou hast appointed for thy servant Isaac, and thereby shall I know that thou hast showed kindness unto my master. And it came to pass, before he had done speaking, that, behold, Rebekah came out, who was born to Bethuel, son of Milcah, and wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, with her pitcher upon her shoulder. And then the man, who in many years to come would read this literally, did wonder just how old Rebekah might be, and he did consult the commentaries of the original version of this narrative, and did find that the wise men who would write these commentaries would disagree unto her age, though they would agree that she was aged between 3 and 14 years old, though some did agree upon 10. And the damsel, who was very fair to look upon, a virgin, neither had any man known her. And Pedro the bear, that did accompany Abraham's servant, did look upon her, and did see that she was to his liking, and did approve. And lo, this story would be Pedro bear approved. And she went down to the well, and filled her pitcher, and came up. And the servant ran to meet her, and said, Let me, I pray thee, drink a little water of thy pitcher, and thou can havest a lollipop. And forgetting everything that she had ever been told about talking to strangers, she said, Drink, my lord. And she hasted, and let down her pitcher upon her hand, and gave him drink. And when she had done given him drink, she said, I will draw water for thy camels also, until they have done drinking, and then tell you where you may get a core for your damaged hyperdrive, and we may discuss my entry this eve into the pod race, which is most dangerous. And she hasted, and emptied her pitcher into the trough, and ran again unto the well to draw water, and drew for all his camels. And the servant did wonder what a hyperdrive was, and did ask his guide, who had brought him to this place. And the guide did reply that Misa donna know what she's a-talking about either. And the man, wondering at her in a way that was not at all wholesome, held his peace, and did drape his cloak over his arm, so nobody would know how he did hold it. And he did wonder to wit whether the Lord had made his journey prosperous or not, and if it was worth him coming. And it came to pass, as the camels had done drinking, that the man took a golden earring of 1/2 shekel weight, and 2 bracelets for her hands of 10 shekel weight of gold, and did inquire if they did have blue milk in these parts, and if the young damsel had heard of things called midichlorians. And he continued, and said, Whose daughter art thou? Tell me, I pray thee, is there room in thy father's house for us to lodge? For I doth want to follow thy home, so that I may purchase you out of bondage, and take you to my master, so that you can be trained as a young Jedi Padawan. And she said unto him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, which she bare unto Nahor, and I do work in a junk shop for a small ugly blue creature with stubby wings that couldn't be any more of an offensive racial stereotype if he did sit on the steps of the shop with a bone through his nose, a watermelon in one hand and a bucket of fried chicken in the other, and did ask the people he did meet where the white women were at, and if they did want to buy some crack. She said, Moreover unto him, We have both straw and provender enough, and room to lodge in, and I am sure that my family will be overjoyed when I do return home with a complete stranger, who I hath met at the well, and hath given me expensive gifts for no reason, and you do probably tell them that you do want to take me away with you. And the man bowed down his head, and worshipped the Lord, for he said, she did know his plan already. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of my master Abraham, who hath not left destitute my master of his mercy and his truth. I being in the way, the Lord led me to the house of my master's brethren, for surely no man could devise a story such as this, where characters could travel great distances of a part of a grand epic tale, and by coincidence end up meeting other characters in the seemingly random fashion, who would later turn out to be close relatives. And the damsel ran, and told them of her mother's house these things, for obviously her mother did run things, and her father had no say in the matter. And Rebekah had a brother, and his name was Laban, and Laban ran out unto the man, unto the well, and the man was disheartened at the sight of Laban. For he had been a servant in his master's house for many years, and did know his master's traditions, and he did know that the damsel would surely be married to Laban. And it came to pass, when he saw the earring and bracelets upon his sister's hands, and when he heard the words of Rebekah his sister, saying, Thus spake the man unto me, that he came unto the man. And behold, he stood by the camels at the well, and he did see upon the man's belt a light saber. And he said, Come in, thou blessed of the Lord. Wherefore standest thou without? For I have prepared the house, and room for the camels. Thou should come hastily, for there may be dark Jedi and Sith watching your every move. And the man came into the house, and ungirded his camels, and gave straw and provender for the camels, and water to wash his feet, and the men's feet that were with him. And he did wonder where Pedro the bear had gone, and he did hope that he was not up to trouble eating posh kids on field trips. And there was set meat before him to eat. But he said, I will not eat until I have told mine errand, for I fear that time is short, and I must soon depart this place, for I have to get a fair maiden to a location far away, so that she may meet someone important. And he, presumably being Laban, said, Speak on. And he said, I am Abraham's servant, presuming, of course, that they would know exactly which Abraham he was talking about. And the damsel's mother did ask if he did mean Abraham Goldstein, whose son was a lawyer and was doing quite well. Or even Abraham Berkowitz, whose son was a doctor and such a nice boy. Or even Abraham Goldenberg, whose son was an accountant and had just been promoted and would soon be a partner in his firm. And he did say neither, and that the Abraham that he did speak of was the damsel's great uncle Abram. And she did have a shocked look upon her face, and did say, What? So he has changed his name now? Well, I wouldn't be surprised. The shame of running off in the middle of the night like that, with his sister and nephew, to go live in a tent in the middle of the desert. And she did go on greatly. Now he would never amount to much, as he was such a useless trickster, who did like going around swindling people. And after a while, when she had finished, the servant did tell her about his master. And the Lord hath blessed my master greatly. And he is become great, and he hath given him flocks, and herds, and silver, and gold, and menservants, and maidservants, and camels, and asses, and all the lands of the Canaanites. And for this he hath chopped off the end of his cock, and got all of the menfolk in his house to do the same. And Laban did wince greatly. And Sarah, my master's wife, and sister, bare a son to my master when she was old, for it was one of his rewards for being obedient unto the Lord. And unto him hath he given all that he hath. And she suddenly did look a little more interested. And my master made me swear, saying, Thou shalt not take a wife of my son, of the daughters of the Canaanites, in whose land I dwell, for he doth prefer to keep to the shallow end of the gene pool, until we hath developed web feet that are better adapted for the deeper end. But thou shalt go unto my father's house, unto my kindred, and take a wife unto my son, for we doth like to keep it in the family, and have done for a number of generations, just as Nahor, my master's brother, did, with his own niece. And I said unto my master, Peradventure the woman will not follow me. And he did not mention Abraham's backup plan. And he said unto me, The Lord, before whom I walk, will send his angel with thee, and prosper thy way. And thou shalt take a wife for my son of my kindred, and of my father's house. And the mother did say, Oh, so that is who he was. I thought that he was just another one of those bloody religious nutters who worship some invisible desert sky fairy. Was here to sell me glazing, or get me to switch firewood suppliers. And I did chase him off with a broom, and the servant did continue. Then shall be clear from this my oath, when thou comest to my kindred, and if they give not thee one, thou shalt be clear from my oath. The reference to giving him one, presumably being a wife for Isaac, that he did choose, and not an example of their particularly friendly hospitality, or a sampling of the goods before he did make a selection. And I came this day unto the well, and said, O Lord God of my master Abraham, if now thou do prosper my way which I go. And those that were listening did get the sinking feeling that the servant was going to tell the whole story to them, line by line, verse by verse. And the scribe who did write this, and was getting paid by the word and not by the hour, did not think that the reader would not simply be satisfied with him simply writing, and he told them what happened. And the servant continued to explain the mechanics of his cunning plan, like a supervillain just before his downfall. Behold, I stand by the well of water, and it shall come to pass that when the virgin cometh forth to draw water, and I say to her, Give me, I pray thee, a little water of thy pitcher to drink. And she said to me, Both drink thou, and I will also draw for thy camels. Clean the windows, and check under the hood for their oil levels. Let the same be the woman whom the Lord hath appointed out for my master's son. And before I had done speaking in mine heart, behold, Rebekah came forth with her pitcher on her shoulder. And she went down unto the well, and drew water. And I said unto her, Let me drink, I pray thee. And by now the eyes of all those who were listening had glazed over, and they did occasionally look unto their wristwatches, and smile politely. She made haste, and let down her pitcher from her shoulder, and said, Drink, and I will give thy camels drink also. So I drank, and she made the camels drink also. And some of those present did slit their wrists just so that they would be allowed to leave, to go seek medical attention. And in times to come, a person listening to a man read this narrative in a literal way would consider moving a small grey circle slightly further along a grey bar ahead of a long red line, for they had somehow heard all of this somewhere before. And I asked her, and said, Whose daughter art thou? And she said, The daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Michal bare unto him. And I put the earring upon her face, for the name of the thing did not give any clue as to the fact that it should be worn upon the ear, and the bracelets upon her hands. And I bowed my head, and worshipped the Lord, and blessed the Lord God of my master Abraham, which had led me in the right way, to take my master's brother's daughter unto his son. For the chances of finding a potential wife for my master's son, who doth turn out to be my master's great niece, must surely be the same as the simple farm boy going off to rescue a princess kept prisoner in a fortress, after his uncle doth buy a pair of mechanical servants, and it doth turn out to be that one of those servants was built by his father, who doth also turn out to be the farm boy's mortal enemy, and second most powerful man in the whole galaxy. And the princess does also turn out to be the farm boy's twin sister. And now, if ye will deal kindly and truly with my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, that I may turn to the right hand, or to the left. For if the answer is no, I shall simply go and see how Ishmael and Hagar are getting on, or if Lot's daughters are still fair virgins. Then Laban, Rebekah's brother, and Bethuel, Rebekah's father, who did strongly resemble a famous sportsman who did appear here in a cameo role, with only 2 lines of dialogue in an attempt to appeal to his fans who would not usually listen to such a story, answered and said, The thing proceedeth from the Lord, who cannot speak unto thee bad or good. For we must agree that the chances of finding Nahor's granddaughter by simply waiting by the well outside Nahor's old house in a town called Nahor, named after Nahor, who did build it, exactly where it was when your master did originally leave here, are so remote that it surely must be a miracle, and the odds of it happening must be astronomical. Behold, Rebekah is before thee. Take her, and go, as the Lord hath spoken, and we must trust in the force on such matters, for she may just be the one spoken of in the prophecy that will bring balance unto the force. And it came to pass, that when Abraham's servant heard their words, he worshipped the Lord, bowing himself to the earth. For though he had no idea what the force was, it did sound just as likely as what had been going on in this narrative so far. The servant brought forth jewels of silver, and jewels of gold, and raiment, and gave them to Rebekah. He gave also to her brother and to her mother precious things, but he did not give bugger all to Bethuel, Rebekah's father. For having made his one and only personal appearance in this narrative, just a few verses prior, he had now since vanished into thin air, and would barely be mentioned again. And they did eat and drink, and he and his men that were with him, and tarried all night. And they did watch the pod racing, and Rebecca did unexpectedly win the race, having been hampered greatly by the other competitors. And they did use the money that they did win to pay off her employer at the junk shop, and he did give them a hyperdrive call. And they rose up in the morning, and he said, Send me away unto my master, for he was by this time parted out, and was eager to get back on with his mission. And her brother and her mother, but not her father, whose conspicuous absence would be explained by those who will read the original version of this narrative as being due to him dying shortly after the meal the night before, cursed by the Lord, as he did not wish the servant to take his daughter to be wed to Isaac, said, Let the damsel abide with us a few days, at the least 10. After that she shall go. That way thou can give us more shiny tat and bling. In the meantime, and scholars who would study this verse in the original language that it was written in would argue over the period of time involved, with some agreeing on days and some saying that it was months or even years. However, it was certain that her mother and her brother did think that she should not leave home so young. And he said unto them, Hinder me not, seeing the Lord hath prospered my way, and Pedro doth approve of this union. Send me away, that I may go to my master. They said, We will call the damsel, and inquire at her mouth, and see if she doth want to say farewell to all her school friends, or leave right away to go on an adventure. And they called Rebekah, and said unto her, Wilt thou go with this man? And she said, I will go, for he hath promised me that he will show me some puppies if I do go. And the mother and brother were disheartened, for they had told her many times that she should not go off with strange men. And they sent away Rebekah, their sister. Well, the band sister anyway, and her nurse, for she was obviously too young to have a handmaiden, and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah, and said unto her, Thou art our sister, be thou the mother of thousands of millions, and let thy seed possess the gate of those which hate them. For your husband will live in a tent, and doth travel about the land, stopping for short lengths of time in different towns, living as a wandering traveller, as his father did before him. And possessing the gates of others is what folks who will live such a life will be known for in the future, especially if they are made from iron, and like manhole covers and fence railings, fetch a fair price when they are weighed in. And Rebekah rose, and her damsels, and they rode upon the camels, rather than needing to be knocked out, tied up, and thrown in the back of an ox cart. And they followed the man, and the servant took Rebekah, and went his way. And Isaac came from the way of the well Laharoy, which was the well that did appear unto Hagar, when she and Ishmael were cast out unto the desert by Abraham, for Sarah's sake. For he dwelt in the south country, preferring not to be anywhere near his father, when his father did fancy worshipping at his altar. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field at the eventide, which is probably a polite way of saying that he did go out into the long grass to take a shit. And he lifted up his eyes, and saw, and behold, the camels were coming, and he did clench and pinch it off halfway. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac in the tall grass, she lighted off the camel. For she had said unto the servant, What man is this that walketh in the field to meet us? With a copy of Sports Illustrated under his arm, and a long length of toilet paper coming out from under his robe, and trailing far behind him. And the servant had said, It is my master, or at least it is my master's son. Therefore she took a veil, and covered herself, for it will not just be those who will be known as Muslims who will prefer their women to wear veils. And thankfully, the scribe who did write this had by now learned how to summarize things, and the servant told Isaac all things that he had done. And Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent, which he had presumably taken with him, which is why it is not at Abraham's encampment, and took Rebekah, probably from behind, though the original text does not give any knowing details. And she became his wife, and he loved her, and Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. And lo, whilst Rebecca did play with her My Little Pony, and did dress up and imagine that she was a fairy princess, Isaac, her 40-year-old husband, did watch over her and contemplate that maybe one day, in the future, another man who would be considered to be a religious prophet would come along and also take himself a wife who had not yet entered puberty, and followers of a competing religion would admonish him greatly for it, forgetting all about Isaac and Rebecca, who was not just of an age that would see Isaac inside a prison cell for quite some time, and visiting a police station to sign the sex offenders register every week for the rest of his life, had this happened in years far distant, but she was also his niece. And the angel of the Lord did unexpectedly appear unto him, and did ask him if he would like to take a seat over there.